They would like those sources to lack contradiction, obviously.
Lacking in contradiction, not necessarily. I mean, obviously we wouldn't want them to contradict if we're looking to verify, specific details in an event or something like that. But for the purposes of proving that some event happened or some event or some person existed in history, I mean, as far as contradictions go, I don't really see this being all that useful because we have historical accounts that contradict specific details, but on the whole are generally considered to be accurate. So I don't really see how this criteria can help us get to like whether or not Jesus existed, other than you're expecting to have some accounts that say that Jesus didn't exist, and then there's other accounts that say that he did. And if you're looking for that, then there are definitely pieces of evidence that we can find in history that seem to indicate that not all Christians believe that Jesus was a historically born person on earth, that he was a celestial figure, that he was only ever a celestial figure. We have multiple instances of that directly in the Bible that showcase this particular thought. So, I mean, if you're looking for contradictions, I mean, I guess it would fail in that. But as far as this is a criteria for proving that somebody existed in history, I really don't see it as useful, but whatever, we'll consider it.
This one's a tough one because, holy shit, yeah. There are a lot of contradictions. But they all universally agree that Jesus was a real person and he was crucified by the Romans. So if we're talking about Jesus existing as a historic figure, it gets a blue check. But if we're trying to learn anything else about Jesus, it's going to get an X.
This is quite interesting, the way that he gauges this particular criteria here, because he gives it both a blue check and a red X for different things, but I really think that this just needs to have a big red X put on it in general. Now, while true, all of the gospel accounts have Jesus existing as a historical figure, you can't necessarily say that for Paul's work. So it is a little bit contradictory there. Of course, Captain Dadpool thinks that Paul thought of Jesus as a historically existing person, so he would obviously be perfectly fine with saying that there is no contradiction between the gospel narratives and Paul. One thing that Paul definitely contradicts the gospels on is who crucified Jesus, because Paul never says the Romans did. That particular idea doesn't actually come into the picture until the Gospels are written. They're the ones that blame the Romans for Jesus' death, while Paul blames the archons of this aeon, which archon was used to talk about rulers and the governing people at the time. And that's true, but none of them were called archons of this aeon. That's a very particular title or phrase, and Paul uses similar phrasing when he's referencing Satan and the demons and the powers and principalities of this world. So it seems like Paul was probably talking about Satan and his demons rather than the Romans at that time. This is also a view that's shared by the early church fathers like Origen. He understood Paul to be talking about Satan and his demons killing Jesus and not the Romans. So this is an idea that reaches far back into Christian history. I also find it kind of weird how he puts a red X on this as saying, oh, but we can't use them to know any specific details about Jesus, when I'm fairly certain that he definitely thinks there are some historical facts within the Gospels. I know that Captain Dadpool generally follows Bart Ehrman's line of thinking on this. He believes that things like Jesus coming from Nazareth is a real thing, Pilate crucifying Jesus, and those kind of incidental details are historical facts that are contained within the gospel. So just in general, I disagree with his evaluation of this particular criteria.